Hi, my name is Varsha Narain. I'm studying to become a secondary educator for the future. At the moment, I am doing my Bachelor of Arts pathway to secondary teaching. I am studying this unit, Ethical Futures, which I think is very important for the future of our children. And I think ethics, values, policies are needing to be well understood for us to actually advocate something in the future and become good educators. Now, I will firstly begin off with discussing professional and personal values as we have learnt in Module 2. Now, one of the quotes that I really like that stand out, which will actually help for the topic that I will be discussing, is in Giovacco-Johnson's article. Now, in this article, he states out, in this quote, Dali's 2008 research regarding practitioners' views on professional behaviour indicates teachers most often define their professional responsibilities by prioritising fairness to children, knowledge of regulations and policies, and practices that reflect the ideals and values central to the early childhood. Now, in relation to this, what stands out importantly in this quote to me is fairness to children, and I think that is what is important when I am discussing an issue, because at the end of the day we are becoming an educator to promote fairness to children, that they get equality in everything they do. Another quote by Newman in his article, he suggests an indication of what ethical professionalism means. He suggests that ethical professionalism involves the development of a strong self-identity characterized by the knowledge, skills, and dispositions necessary for confidence and competence in making sound ethical judgments. Now, obviously, all of us would by now know what professional and personal values are, but I'll still like to briefly just word it out in very simple terms. Professional values have to obviously do with your professional fields, but I personally believe, and I'm pretty sure we have learnt that in Module 2 as well, that professional values are very much characterised through our personal values. Now, personal values can be constructed through cultural backgrounds, your context, and socially. So I would say personal values are socially constructed. Now, further, we need to understand that values formed are highly influenced by the contextual background. And this is really stated out in relation to Australia, obviously, and its ambiguous nature of values and how we come to an agreement. In Newman's article again, he writes, in a pluralistic society like Australia, establishing a commonly agreed set of values is no simple matter because values are subjective and culturally and politically bound. People disagree about values. Now, in relation to this is when I state that Australia's ambiguous nature about values and how they're agreed upon is obviously we won't agree upon the same values because Australia being a multicultural country, our culture, society, everything influences it, and there will be differentiating views and perspectives on it. Therefore, it is clear that each issue will be complicated, and to come to an agreement on it, we need to understand the issue and we really need to understand why it is problematic. Now, this is where in Module 3, how we learn about advocacy with educators is important, is because we need to be able to advocate what we're discussing and the issue. And if we try do it to the best of our ability and we are passionate about the issue as well, it will come out to be better. Now, I'd like to introduce the topic that I'm going to be talking about today, and what I'd be advocating is same-sex and versus co-ed schools. Now, this is important to me because strongly I'm against gender inequality, and I don't believe that is correct, hence why I am studying at university to become a future educator, and I'd not like to stick to the notion of that you can only come to university or study if you're a boy, like the traditional values. So the whole same-sex notion of schooling is a very familiar and traditional method of pedagogy, which was employed throughout the 19th century. Now, this notion was taken away, but not completely, which I personally believe leads to gender inequality. We need to get rid of same-sex schools, and this is because it's sort of saying that there's still a sense of inequality, and we're stereotyping genders and we're differentiating between them. Now I'm going to talk about some of the theories that I have come through the research I've conducted. I've come across a few interesting articles and very good perspectives actually on same-sex and co-ed schools. Now, in one of the articles, it's written by Thompson, he quotes, or it could be that schools targeting girls and boys use different educational approaches. Perhaps approaches used by girls' schools are more effective. Further, Stanberry's article, she suggests that, in this quote, Leonard Sachs and others agree that merely placing boys in separate classrooms from girls accomplishes little, but single-sex education enhances student success when teachers use techniques geared towards the gender of their students. Now, both of these quotes actually go on to suggest that there is different approaches taken for different sexes. So if you're a male, there's a different approach. If you're a female, there's a different approach. Now, I think there is no other way to categorize that unless you're gender stereotyping. What different approach would you use for a group of girls that you would use for a group of boys? If it was taken in an individual perspective, that would be different if you're trying to target each individual's needs and stuff. But when you're doing it just based on gender by an all-girls school or a boys' school, that is what I think is creating gender stereotyping, and it creates sexism. Now, further in Thompson and Novatani, I apologize for saying his name wrong, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it, and Saunders' article, they further go on to discussing gender stereotyping and sexism which occurs in same-sex schools. For example, some of the quotes here say that some single-sex education programs develop their curriculum around gender stereotypes by, for example, emphasizing that boys need more active classrooms and girls need more nurturing learning environments. Or you can also see this evident in Novatani's, once again I apologise. His quote says that co-education advocates and researchers also report that segregating students by gender, be it via entire schools or simply classrooms, can lead to greater gender discrimination and make it harder for students to deal with other sex later in life. And further, Saunders, he compares sexism in relation to racism. So, for example, I'm pretty sure everyone's aware that pretty much back in the days, there was racial discriminations through if you were dark-skinned or if you were American and you were not white or British, you would go to a different type of school. You would be with the same type of people. Now, if that can advocate for racism, then I would say that the same-sex schools is doing the same thing. So he suggests that when segregation raises its head, it usually casts one subject as having more value than the other. Just as racial segregation promoted racism, schools segregated by sex promote sexism. According to Science Daily, a study conducted in 2010 by Professor of Psychology, Human Development and Family Studies, Lynn S. Lipen, examined classrooms segregated by sex and found signs of sexism in students. She concluded the choice to fight sexism by changing co-educational practices or segregating by gender has parallels to fight against racism. Now, another perspective that has come out from all these research and articles was that, like I've suggested earlier, that schooling is the foundation for the future. So it's a foundation point. What you learn now, it's like we've learned in the unit, that's why codes of ethics and care is so important, is because when you are with children, they feel like that this is what they're learning. It will stay by them for a very long time. So if this is a foundation point, then by having same-sex schools in relation to co-ed schools, I think it further promotes negative implications for the workplace and the future environments that we'll be heading off to after what we have done. Now, this is actually suggested in the research I've done as well. In Sandberg's article, she says that students in single-sex classrooms will one day live and work side by side with members of the opposite sex. Educating students in single-sex school limits their opportunity to work cooperatively and coexist successfully with members of the opposite sex. Further, in Novatoni's article, I apologize for his name once again, he says that school is the preparation for adult life. Says Helpem, a former APA president, how can boys and girls learn to interact as equals in the workplace if they have no experience in interacting equal in schools? And Saunders is also suggesting the same thing in his article, where he goes on to say, according to Forbes, when students are segregated by sex, they miss opportunities to work together and develop vital social skills which would come in handy in your future workplace, your future relationships, and basically everything you're going to do. You need to have a certain level of social skills where you can interact with other sexes as well. Now, at the end of this presentation, there will be a small slide which will show you that in the Australian government website, which I did some research on, it says that they are trying to get rid of gender inequality and promote gender equality in the workplace. And the aim of gender equality in the workplace is to achieve broadly equal outcomes for women and men. Not exactly the same outcome for all individuals. They need to be equal for male and females, whether they're doing whatever they're doing. So you can have a look at that, and you can go onto the website as well if you need more information. Now, as the earlier discussions in the unit and through what I've just been discussing in this presentation, we have obviously come to know that the notion of same-sex schools promotes gender stereotyping and sexism, which I believe can lead to a sense of bullying, but it can definitely affect the mental state of a child. Now, in the Human Rights website, in the Children's Rights document for 2014, one of the rights that a child has is the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. Therefore, what we've discussed earlier in relation to them not getting the equal schooling environment, same-sex schools, it will affect a boy or a girl. So, for example, if a girl does not believe that this is what she should do, or if there's a boy who doesn't believe that activities are important, like physical education, it will affect his mental health, because he will feel like that I'm a boy, so I should be doing this, but why am I not interested? And so therefore, if we are promoting children's rights as well, we need to keep that in mind, and we need to see how same-sex schools are affecting it. Now, what I'll be doing is introducing you to one of my friends and schooling. We go to uni together. She studies teaching as well. I will get her to come along, and I'll ask her a few questions in her perspective for same-sex schools. So we'll just wait for that. Hi, so this is my friend, and I'm going to let her do a little introduction of herself.
Well, hi, my name's Shivani. I'm doing a Bachelor of Arts pathway teaching primary.
Okay, well, Shivani, I'm sure you know what I've just been talking about. So it's same-sex schools versus co-ed schools. And what I would like to know from you is, what is your perspective on same-sex schools?
Well, I believe that there shouldn't be same-sex schools, actually.
Okay, and why is that your perspective?
Well, if you think about it, in relation to further tertiary education, I have yet to come across something as a same-sex university or a same-sex college.
Yeah.
Because, in the bigger world, it just doesn't work.
Exactly. So, I've got another question for you. Do you believe it is correct for gender inequality in the workplace?
No.
No. Okay. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Now, that was a different perspective provided, and as we can see that there is just not one person who's against same-sex schools, there are several other people, and as she said, in the future, are there, when you go into tertiary education, is there something as same-sex universities, colleges, or TAFE, or etc.? Now, I'm going to finish it up now and just like to say that through all the research I've discussed with same-sex and co-ed schools, my perspective is that there should not be same-sex schools, as I stated in the introduction, and that is because I believe it leads to gender inequality. Now, I talked about the pedagogy, so the approaches that they use for teaching, which is unfair because it is gender stereotyping. I discussed gender stereotyping in relation to it affecting the mental states of the children, and I further went on to say how it promotes workplace inequality, and you will not be prepared for the future life. If that's your preparation and that's your foundation point, then where are we headed? So I would like everyone to keep this in mind, share this video, and I hope we can get somewhere with this. Thank you.